What's up?
What's up, Prez? How are you, man?
Good. So I think we're live. Yeah, we're live. We're good. We're going.
Let's fucking go.
What are you wearing? A winter hat?
Yeah.
Where are you?
New York City. Where are you?
Miami. What's the weather?
Cold. Winter hat weather, man. It's
Okay.
November.
All right. I'm gonna be
55.
there. I'm gonna be there in 2 days. Molly the Meatball, Madison Square Garden, Saturday night. All right. Let's start. Did you read? He just like half an hour. SBF or Sam Binky. He just put out like a 30-thing thread. Did you read it?
Uh-huh.
All right. And you saw my original video about what I thought happened, right?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I want you to ask questions.
Okay.
Because some of your assumptions were kind of adorable, but also
Adorable.
I had none to do with the FTX shit to the crowd. Can we clear that up first?
No, I know, but
want...
you're like my Bitcoin guy.
I'm your Bitcoin guy.
Yeah, you're an expert in the arena.
Yeah, I'm your Bitcoin guy, but I just want to make sure you got all like the Vlad Tenevs coming after me as soon as you tweeted. I got nothing to do with it. I'm gonna be your Bitcoin guy. Okay.
No, you're like if you're watching a TV show, you're the expert they bring in that has nothing to do with what, but knows the space.
Oh yeah, I got thoughts. I've been around for a while.
Okay, correct. Okay, so let's start. After I did my video, the first thing everyone's like, when you buy on an exchange, and by the way, people think I bought on FTX. I didn't. I bought on Gemini. So my Bitcoins are still there, while far less in value than when I bought them at. But so I didn't lose anything. I was just trying to figure it out. You go on, and FTX is the biggest exchange, or second biggest. Fourth, Binance is one, but it's one of the big boys. Everybody probably saw it. Tom Brady involved. They advertise with us. You go on FTX. You put in just like a stock, you put in an order at a price to buy the Bitcoins. Was FTX going and finding people who are selling, or were they just writing tickets as people are saying IOUs? Like, okay, we take your money, you bought it at this price, and it's an IOU, but they're not actually doing the transaction to go find these Bitcoins.
So what I'm hearing happened, there's a tremendous amount of potentially really fucked up shit. But from a high level, that issue of rehypothecating money is what it's traditionally called, had nothing to do with Bitcoin. Like, Prez, if you go buy a stock at Fidelity and Fidelity says you own X amount of shares of Facebook, but then they take the actual money, they just show it to you on the website. You log in and it says it's there, but they take the actual money that you gave them and they go buy a bunch of hot dogs. Well, then it's not actually there. And if you try and withdraw it, they're going to say, sorry, can't process that. And then they go insolvent and then they go to jail probably, especially if they're in the United States. So that's
which they're not, by the way. They're not, right?
Yeah, we could talk about that and why they're not, and kind of the whole relationship with the trading firm and all sorts of loads of bullshit. But to be clear, rehypothecating capital using customer deposits, that has nothing to do with Bitcoin. That's been an issue in finance, and there's a lot of regulatory oversight to make sure that institutions can't do that to retail.
So, all right, and we'll probably bounce around a little bit. There is a lot of regulatory oversight and law, and there's things. If a bank, like a portion of your money is obviously guaranteed, if you put in a bank, they don't have it, the government helps you. I've seen people say government bailout. Now, the Bitcoin ethos, as I understand it, is deregulation. Don't want to be regulated. So yeah, you're shaking your head there. Like, where do Bitcoin people, do you want companies like that? Because theoretically, as I understand it, if you get enough publicity and do anything, you can pretend to be this exchange where you're just holding the money and you're freezing the price they buy it, and it acts, you think it's really working until there's the liquidity call and it's too much. But it anybody could do what they're doing. But there's also no regulation. So people are saying, is the government going to help people who lost the money? This, that. Do you want regulation? Do you think exchanges like this should be regulated by the government?
So the ethos of Bitcoin that's important, I'll change your word slightly. It's that you don't have to rely on regulation. If you want to hold all your own shit, do all your own shit, you can. And that choice is extremely important from the highest level possible. It gives the people leverage. Is that if I feel like there's a run on the bank or I don't like something, I actually have the leverage to conduct my own finances and custody my shit myself. Do I think that regulation and government oversight is going to go away by the time I wake up tomorrow? I mean, come on, get the fuck out of here. I run a regulated company that interfaces with Bitcoin. I got licenses. I comply with the law. I think that there are services that people are going to want to use because it's more convenient and there's cool shit that companies can do and build. But it's a super important point that you have the option, and it gives people the leverage and the fact that we have a monetary policy and an asset that isn't controlled by any central person. As long as you have that choice, that all you need is the choice. So I would say that's the ethos.
Because and the line that all the Bitcoin people, if you don't have the keys, you don't have the cheese. That's what everyone's saying. Meaning, like, now, the flip side to me, who anybody who's followed my Bitcoin journey, I am, well, the baron of Bitcoin. I don't get technology. I don't like the complicated ways to buy it. So I like a Gemini, which is fine. I like, before this FTX thing happened, that I can just go, hey, here's a deposit, US dollars, boink, one button. Now I get Bitcoins, and when I want it back, boink, I can do it. I don't know how Bitcoin gets as massive as the Bitcoin people want it to be if you can't do that. If people can't, the non-educated technical people can't do those type of transactions seamlessly, which is kind of, isn't that what your business sort of revolves around to begin with? Like the fast, easy way to go Bitcoin to dollars?
We're trying to change payments, but I'm not going to pitch my own shit right now because it's kind of irrelevant from what
Yep.
this kid did. But sort of, but not really. But no, I agree with you, man. Like, people are going to want convenience to reach a large audience. There's an expected experience. There is just a knowing trade-off. And like, when Bitcoin gets an approved ETF from the SEC, that level of custodial purchase of Bitcoin and exposure for retail is wildly different than a kid that was shuffling money in the Bahamas and in Hong Kong. And so I think, like, when this happens, I've been in this industry for close to 10 years. Whenever this shit happens, the biggest pain is the setback to, like, what we're all trying to achieve. And what I think this means to humanity is just, we're setting us back time because of all this misinformation and misunderstanding. I don't disagree that people are going to want convenience. I think that you're right. There is a knowing trade-off, by the way, though, that unfortunately, if you opt for that convenience, you are at risk of this. So you need to understand who's your custodian, what's their licensing. My big issue is the lack of proper regulation makes it look like an FTX is similar to a fucking Gemini. At the end of the day, the best thing you can do is hold your own Bitcoin. But it's really, it's bullshit that I was biking through Chicago, where I'm from, and I'm seeing that kid's face all over my city. That was really,
The FTX
really
guy,
bad.
Sam Free, and so he does this whole. I'll get to the question in my head after. He just released like a 30-point thread. It essentially was like, "Hey guys, I made a boo-boo. Sorry that I didn't say anything. Like, I was too busy." He's like, "I was too busy. Lots going on. I probably should have spoke earlier. I was dealing with the Binance stuff. I couldn't talk, even though the Binance thing, I think, was like 1 day or 24 hours, whatever it was." He's like, my main thing here is to make sure all the customers get their liquidity. We're trying to raise more money. By the way, for a US customer, which I think is 5% of their base, the rest is other, you're fine. And he kept doing something where I got the vibe like, okay, I'm the CEO. It stops with me. It's my fault, but it really wasn't. Like, that almost had the vibe of it. Like, ultimately I have to take responsibility, even if I didn't know what was going on. What are your thoughts on, based on our kind of text back and forth, you're not a fan of Sam Binky?
No, I'm not a Binky guy. Let me tell you what I think happened, but I know your crowd. I mean, I've been a stoolie longer than I've been a Bitcoiner, so I know I'm talking to the guys that are also going to be watching Red Zone this Sunday. So you got to pause me if I lose you.
Okay.
So, and we're calling them Binky, DeMillo and Binky.
It's too many names. SBF.
Yeah.
No, I assume I've spoken with a guy a couple times. I assume you've crossed paths with him.
I talked with the team, which to my knowledge, I don't know who knew what. I never had a conversation with Binky. There's a hilarious overlap for us. I did a Business Insider where Binky was just spewing a bunch of bullshit about Bitcoin. And I called Business Insider and said it was wrong. I did a whole thing there. So we had a mini feud.
Oh, that's, yeah. I'm not.
I know. Not to
don't try to get me off my game.
I know. No. Go, press go. Okay. So, pause me if I lose you. So the SBF kid, he had two businesses. He started initially a trading firm. It was called Alameda. And it was just a normal prop firm that traded, just like any of these Citadel, these guys, they trade for profit. And he owned, let's say, 100% of this thing.
And
He
he's an
then
MIT geek who basically created an algorithm, right? To like,
presumably a great trader.
yeah.
The first way he made his money is way back in the day. This market is new, so it's incredibly inefficient. So there used to be an arbitrage between the East and the West. Like Bitcoin was way more expensive than it was in China or something, let's say. And so he was selling Bitcoin in America and buying cheaper in China, and he was just printing money. And so he came from trading. He came from Jane Street, bright kid. And so he starts his trading firm, does really well. He then later starts an exchange. That's the FTX thing. So he's got two of these things, owns 100% of both.
And the FTX model theoretically is a commission. So, right? Isn't that, if you're doing it correctly, you're matching the buyer and the seller, and you're taking, I don't know, a 10 to whatever the cut is, percent. And the more trades you get the percent, and that's how you make money. Correct?
Yep. Yeah.
All right.
It's for price discovery. Is
Yep.
you let market participants find price discovery, and you take a commission on the action. Now, that's the first red flag, though, is because you got one entity you own that is for profit, seeking to take the other sides of trades, and then you're the guy that's also making the market. So you're theoretically on the other side of your customers, and you could claim you're not. That's got to be bullshit. And if not, why don't you run your business out of New York, motherfucker? Why are you in Hong Kong and the Bahamas, right? That's always in this industry been regulatory arbitrage. Is I can probably get away with a lot more in jurisdictions that don't have proper oversight. So that's step one. Is it was definitely not a good sign that someone was running a trading firm that also was controlling the order book. That's a little bizarre. Now, this is where it gets almost comically, if you can piece these things together, fucking insane. His exchange creates a token, which you've probably heard from Bitcoiners. Bitcoin is not like any of the other bullshit. What about Ethereum? No, I'm telling you, Prez, none of them. And the notion of how the ethos, will get into it, but he just creates money out of thin air. He calls it FTX token. And he creates a bunch of these fucking things, and he hands them out of thin air, by the way. So the realized value of this thing is zero. It's like, hey, Prez, this is money. And you're like, no, it's not. It's a fucking hotel card. It's
right.
the realized value is zero. He hands the FTX token that his exchange created to his trading firm. From my understanding, by the way, this is just what I understand, my thesis. He hands it to his trading firm, and in the way the token works, 30% of the revenue that comes from the exchange goes to purchasing back the token. So the perceived value to the public is, as the exchange does well, the token does well. Because if those guys are generating billions in revenue, they're taking a third of it and they're buying this piece of shit. So if I buy it now and the exchange does really good, then they're going to be buying my bags. And it's this bullshit, scammy, ridiculous nonsense that's violating securities law. You cannot do that. Okay, so that's you got a question for me?
No, you may answer it, so I'll let you go.
So that's then he raises a bunch of venture capital to the exchange. So he dilutes his ownership in the FTX exchange. He raised billions of dollars. So how's the guy buying the Miami Heat? And he's on a poster with Giselle, right? Where's that money coming from? Is he raised a lot of it from investors. So he's diluting his ownership in the exchange, but he's really taking all of the volume and pumping he's doing through the exchange, and he's siphoning revenue back into this trading firm that he still owns 100% of, right? And then he's using that trading firm, presumably, and I've seen rumors, I don't know what's true, to potentially trade against customers. And he's kind of like rehypothecating funds by buying back his own token that he just fucking printed out of thin air and handed to himself in Hong Kong. What supposedly happened is his trading firm that was doing really well got blown up. Everyone did in this market, right? This market's crashed. They were in positions. They were caught on the wrong side, and they had a huge hole in their balance sheet. And so what he supposedly did is took billions of dollars from the exchange. They got all this venture capital money, all these customer deposits, and he plugged the hole into his trading firm. And then in return, the trading firm, as collateral for the loan, like, here, take $4 billion, fix this fucking mess. This whole relationship and the siphoning of money is how this whole empire runs. And so you guys got to fix this hole, take $4 billion of people's money, potentially, make it work, and give me collateral for a loan so I can write it off in my books as a loan. What was the collateral of the loan? That dumbass token that he printed out of thin air. So effectively, the loan was backed by nothing because it's a token he printed out of thin air that he's the only buyer of, right? If I tell you like this thing's worth $10 because
Right.
I buy it for $10, but I go on the street and everyone's like, I'm not paying $10 for that shit. It's effectively zero. So I got a loan back by nothing. Now that's a huge problem if all of a sudden users want to withdraw all the money and the thing that I would need to liquidate in theory also starts racing to zero. So I don't know when this theoretically happened, but seemingly when the market started to crash. Then the balance sheet leaked, which I don't know if you knew. So the trading firm's balance sheet leaked. And really smart people, like potentially Binance, looked at it and said, oh my God, the balance sheet is full of this token they printed out of thin air and loans against it. And your first thought is, who in God's name is giving $4 billion against that thing? It's illiquid and its realized value is probably zero. And then you start thinking like, well, there's this lending firm and I got to call my buddy that works there. And you realize the only people that would actually be able to do that is themselves, is probably the exchange themselves. They probably lent it to themselves. And then that's when you see a tweet like, we're dumping this piece of shit and we're getting out, and users start to withdraw funds. So the combination of users withdrawing funds and that piece of shit token going from $25 to $2, so the collateral's gone. So if the collateral against the loan's worth zero, you just got a hole of billions of dollars in a run on the bank. Did that make sense?
Yeah, well, like 62% of it made sense, but that is to be expected. The stoolie part of that, the listing is probably like just drool coming down their mouth, and then like the Bitcoin people are going to get it. I got a 62 to 68%. CZ Binance.
Mm-hmm.
What? So the way I read it, and everything that you just said, the spreadsheet leaks. He sees it. He was an early investor in FTX, and FTX gave him a bunch of your hotel business cards, basically, as basically. So he invests he gives them money, and then they gave him back these.
It's insane. Yeah, he makes an investment in the exchange and he wants to exit his position. And I guess he took in compensation. I mean, money's whatever you want it to be, right? It could be this if we want it to be. And so yeah, he took those FTX tokens.
And then he, as I understand it, is really what broke FTX. Maybe not. Maybe it was going to break anyways. But when he says, I'm liquidating all of these and I'm worried about FTX, he's obviously, Binance is huge. Anybody who's following him sees it like, oh, if he's doing it, I better do it. And everybody rushes to FTX at once.
Yeah. So firstly, I'm speculating here.
Yeah.
Like, fuck do I know, right? I've been around, so I think I know a decent amount more than the average guy, but I'm speculating. So I don't want to speculate whether the guy was running the bank on purpose, but just think about it naturally. If you own a thing that's being over levered in a credit market that is actually worth far less than what the market's propping it up to be, I want to sell it. I don't care if I'm CZ or I don't care if I'm Joe Schmo. That thing's going to start to see a lot of sell pressure because the gig is up. So listen, the way he phrased it on Twitter, like, this smells like a run on the bank, I got to get out. Yeah, I mean, it kind of incites a little bit of panic. And did he do it on purpose? I don't know. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to try and but no, you can't blame the guy. As soon as that balance sheet leaked, everyone was like, oh my God, if this thing falls to zero, FTX is going under. And then how long did it take? 2 days? I mean,
yeah.
Right.
So what is your vibe? And I think I know your vibe. And again, I know you've made it very clear. This is, you don't have like insider knowledge. This is your take on it. The way Sam Binky or whatever, SBF, did that thread, he really, like I said, he's like, I fucked up, but the buck stops with me, but I really didn't know what was going on. Like, I should have paid more attention. I was just bad at a couple things. Well, there was one stat in there, which was crazy, where if I saw it, to me, it was the one that jumped out the most. Let me pull it up. When he said how much like cash they should have on hand. Let me see here.
Yeah, he was talking about user leverage.
Like U.S. liquidity ready to deliver 24x average daily withdrawals. Our actual was 1.7. Now, to me, that is criminal. Like, and he's like, whoops, how could we be there? To me, that's a crime. Like, it's not, even though he's not placing it that. So is your vibe this guy should go to jail?
Yeah. I mean, if what we're talking about is true, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, like, and to to go, hey, my bad. Oh, I'm sorry. Was that a 1.7? It should have been a 2. Oh, Jesus Christ, I need to have more coffee. Fuck you. You
Right.
can't you can't meddle in customer deposits. It's old as time, and that's why if you actually read his tweets, his US entity is actually fine in
Because
one to
he
one.
can't, because it's regulated.
Correct. Correct.
So
And
he knows what he's doing. I think that's one of your best points actually during this for anything, and not to be self-serving. We've said that about gambling. Like, we're regulated by the government, so at any time if you have money, you can go get it. You have other like my bookie's a notorious one, but the offshore, they're not ready. What are you going to do? If they say we're out of money of this, you're kind of fucked. I never really thought about it with the exchanges. Like the Winklevoss do Gemini. That's why I did Gemini, but I certainly wasn't like, oh, they're regulated US. I didn't really think that. Now, Bitcoin, a more general question. And so the Bitcoin price cratered a little bit, went from, I don't know, 20 to 15, is back up a little bit. My one question on this, and this may be a fucked up way to look at it. If these, and I guess you don't know if they were actually doing IOUs or they were purchasing Bitcoins, but Bitcoin is finite. They like that's kind of hypothetically, if people just lose their Bitcoins, wouldn't that make Bitcoin arguably more valuable? If there's just a slate of it that is wiped off the books, and maybe they're not, maybe Sam was using them and other people, like, I think I have 10 Bitcoins with FTX. Now, somebody who shouldn't has them, like, what happened to these Bitcoins? Or were they just never touched? He never executed the deal.
No, you're spot on. It does make, if Bitcoin supply goes down, if there's 100 Yeezys for sale and all of a sudden we realize we only got 50, then yeah, the price is going to go up because there's not as much for fucking sale. So you're right. Not in the short term though, because all these guys that are having a liquidity crunch. So how do I put it for the football fans? All the guys that now owe money and are in excessive amounts of debt, how do you pay back? You got to start selling the shit that you have. And so if you got an excessive amount of Bitcoins, if you've got billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin and now you got to pay back debts or else you go to jail, you got to sell it and you got to sell it now. And if you start cratering the price, it doesn't matter because you don't want to go to fucking jail.
Got
And
it.
so in the short term, it's going to go down. But if there's a really important point that the Bitcoin community, I got to make for them. When this happens in 2008, Prez, it's the same thing. Rehypothecating money, meddling in customer deposits, bundling over credit over credit over credit until it unwinds and it damages everyday people. In 2008, how did that get resolved? Is that the federal government and central banks bailed everyone out. The problem with that in the Bitcoin ethos is that you and I, the everyday guys, we get paid for that because they're just going to print more dollars and inflate us, dilute the dollars that we worked really hard for. If I'm a construction worker, I work my ass off. I make X amount of dollars, and now I'm part of the dilution to pay back for banksters doing criminal shit. That's bullshit. That's what happened in 2008. The reason Bitcoin is so cool, you can call me a loser to the everyday person if you want. I'm telling you, Bitcoin's really cool because there's no bailout. They're not going to be able to be like, you know what, SBF fucked up. We're going to change Bitcoin from being finite. We're just going to double the supply to help him get out of this hole. There is no bailout. So sure, you guys can sell against my Bitcoins right now and the thing can go to 15K, 10K. I don't give a fuck. But there's no bailout and there's no way you're inflating the thing I'm holding. And it's going to go right back up over the next 6 to 12 to 18 months as soon as these guys go to jail and get out of their positions. And so the short term, I don't care, man. But that's exactly what's happening, and that's why Bitcoin's different. Does
Yeah,
that
the
make
flip
sense?
side to no, it totally makes sense. The flip side to that, if you're this hardworking person and you just put 200 grand, 100 grand, whatever proportion to your income is with this guy, and I guess Bitcoin people should have done your homework. It was in the bomb as you should have had your own keys. You should have cold stored and kept yourself. Great. That doesn't help me that I trusted what I thought. Like, I would never blame anybody for believing FTX was a legitimate organization. I mean, you got Tom Brady out there with Giselle. They're on I walk down the street. They're on the cover of, not the cover, they're on the side of the Miami Heat arena. Any rationally not overly technical person is going to be like, my money is safe there. I'm going to be able to get it out. So I get what you're saying, but then there's the people. Like, I had 1 million Gemini. If I had 1 million in FTX, I can live. I'm lucky. Not everyone is there. So that is the part when it's like, yeah, I guess you just get fucked. And that is sort of the Bitcoin ethos. But I'd hate to be in those shoes. There's definitely people who just lost like their life savings.
100%, man. It's fucking terrible. So like my take on this, now this is getting into like human beliefs and stuff, so I may exceed this crowd. But like the world should be run on personal responsibility, man. Like there should be, if regulators are going to exist and they're going to tell you who's good and who's bad, they need to do their job, and they need to do probably a better job at pointing that out. So that's for one. But generally speaking, Bitcoin gives you the option to be solely responsible on your own. And if you don't want to take it for convenience and such and use Gemini, I got no problem with that. I'm not going to tell anybody what to do, but it's personal responsibility. If you assess and pick out a bad partner and don't learn enough, do I feel bad for you? Yeah, I feel awful. No one deserved this shit. This is criminal level shit. But I mean, what more can you do?
There is an argument, and this is as I'm thinking, and I'm again looking at my industry. It's too late now, but an offshore sports book cannot advertise on TV and do they. FTX is on the Super Bowl. So whose responsibility is that to be like, this isn't your, I guess it's a US, so that's different because they are regulated in the US.
Well, this is why this is that shady shit. They got something in Hong Kong. They're swimming in the Bahamas. They got a US one. The kid was clever. He was creating money, giving it to his prop firm, and then taking VC money to drive volume through his thing and buying his own shit.
So if I bought on FTX, would I automatically have ended up in the US because I'm in the US? So there's nobody in the United States is affected by this.
Theoretically, I mean, there may be like some of these bigger funds. The international one had all of the liquidity, had all the big traders. So you probably, if I were a big hedge fund that was trading actively on this stuff, I wanted to set up an offshore account so I can get to all the liquidity. So, but theoretically, the everyday US person, had a US account at FTX and can withdraw.
That's good news.
Well, I mean, come on, you don't love Europeans. What the fuck is that?
Listen, I'm pro-America. World Cup's coming up. I mean, I care about all humans, but I'd rather the Joe down the street didn't get fucked. Nobody should get fucked. He should go to jail. I don't trust anybody with that haircut to begin with. It's like, it was too like, look at my hair. I'm just going to let it be awful.
Well, the other thing too that bothers Bitcoiners. So I am one of those like, Bitcoin's the real innovation, and all these other things are just ticking time bombs and a load of shit. And this is a great example of guys printing money out of thin air and running the bank and ruining people's lives. So it's bullshit. But the problem with this kid that everyone had was he would shit on Bitcoin constantly and prop up his pieces of shit and go to regulators and spout anti-Bitcoin shit. So,
really?
And it was all about this effective altruism. He was open. He was like, I'm coming to this industry not because I necessarily understand how any of this shit works. I want to make as much money so I can give it away. And like the way that translates, if you understand how his business works, is you're taking money out of the everyday person's pocket just to give it to charity, as if what the fuck? It was this weird like, I'm so rich and I'm going to give it away and I'm going to fix climate change. It was like, well, then stop trading against customers. The fuck is your problem?
And there's also that clip of him. I think he's in Congress or somewhere. He's political venue and he's like talking about transparency. That's gone super viral. Or he's like the old things that we're going to be all about transparency and this and that. And obviously full of shit. I don't know. I will say my vibe on him when I talked to him, I never thought, I mean, he didn't come across as malicious, but and maybe he is altruistic and maybe he just thought he was smarter than everybody else, like that he could get away with this.
I mean, I don't know. Like I got to be careful myself too. Like I don't know when funds started to be rehypothecated, when he started to lie. But it is a really disservice to what people are trying to achieve. You're setting people back. I mean, the fact that we're on this live right now and having to explain a lot of this shit is criminal within itself. And then the fact that people's lives are potentially ruined, it's fucking ridiculous. So no, I don't have high thoughts about the kid. Yeah, he's like, I got in Chicago right outside my house. There's a poster of him and Giselle or whatever.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
Probably be coming down. Yeah, tough. As we were talking, tough month for Brady. All right. Well, I think that helped. If you're a Barstool guy and you are interested in Bitcoin, follow Jack. He's kind of like pretty good at making things make sense, and look him up. He's a kingpin in the industry. So I appreciate. No, you're a kingpin. You are. I didn't know who you
No,
were, so I
just,
did a Bitcoin. Jack Mallers, Jack Mallers, Jack Mallers. Well, who the fuck is this Jack Mallers guy?
I've
So
been around
now
for a
I
while.
know.
I've been a
I know.
stoolie a while too. So
I know.
no, I appreciate it, man. Part of
All
the
right.
people.
Talk to you later, man. Thank
All right,
you.
Chris. Peace.
Bye.